Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cropland Genetics Agri Solutions Crop Can. I'm Mark Ullman, Seed and Agronomy Advisor. Today I have with me Dan Utek from New Vision Co-op. We want to follow up on some grain storage concerns that we had going into fall. Through the last couple months of storage, we've had both corn and soybean discussions with farmers and concerns that came up. So Dan, on soybean storage, we've had some guys talk about some crusting across the top of the grain bin. What should they be looking for, and then what can they do with them soybeans?
Well, the first thing we've been telling guys is ever since harvest, you need to be checking your bins at least once a week. The old rule of thumb was every 2 weeks or maybe every month, but these days with the crop that we have this year, every week, pick your day, but go out there. First of all, make sure you're safe with the ice and snow on the roofs and everything and the ladders. Make sure you have somebody with you, or at least that they know that you're up in the bin. We've also had some accidents in the area, and we do every year, where people get engulfed in grain. So take somebody with you when you check the bins. Check them weekly. First rule of thumb is, as you're in there checking the bin and walking across, if you're not sinking in up to your knees or so like you normally should, you probably have a problem developing. And we've heard that in some bins this year, or just recently now, where guys will walk in and say, that looks all right, not any discolored grain, but I can easily walk across the bin. At that point, you need to get some grain moved out of that bin. Aeration isn't going to solve it. You need to draw some out, get the air flowing through there again, and then it should be okay.
Okay, good. On to corn. How about corn that was never dried but put into a bin or an air bin, say at that 17 to 20% range? Got some guys really running into some issues there. What should we be looking for? And of course, what can we do?
Well, this wasn't a long-term storage corn crop, and we had talked about that earlier, the immaturity of the crop and everything and the high moisture. It's not a long-term storage, so it's something we recommend a producer move some corn out of the bin once a month or something like that. And granted, with the snow and stuff, that might not be feasible now. If you can't move the grain out, once again, be walking in the bin, making sure you don't have any crusting developing. Make sure there's any snow that's blowing in there, because with wind and snow that we've had, that just enough can be of an issue. You blow the snow in on a cold day, your temperature gets up to 30 degrees, and all of a sudden it melts, and then you have a crust or a problem developing in the bin. So on the stuff, the higher moisture stuff, continue to run your fans. I think you're a little low on some of your moistures when you say some of this was put in at 17 to 20. We've had producers say that they put in 25% corn because they didn't want to wait in line at the elevator. Their dryer didn't have the capacity at home. So that stuff, it's getting to be mid-February. As we get into March and April, what is that seed supposed to do? It's supposed to grow. So when it starts getting that urge of spring temperatures and the moisture in the air and stuff, we have to be real careful. If you're holding some of that high moisture corn, probably time to get it through a dryer or get it to town.
Good. And as far as moisture is concerned, within the kernel and within the bin or the load that you have, we're getting some false moisture readings, and we've talked about it before, where that individual kernel may be dry on the outside, but maybe 3 or 4 points wetter in the actual inside of that kernel. Or a load, you could have a 4 to 6% moisture variation, just like you guys seen harvesting through a field. From end to end, your yield monitor may tell you a 4 to 6% moisture swing. Well, that same amount of product was brought through your dryer, which dried it that many percent. Say you had to take 6 points out, but you still had that 4 to 6% variability, which also went right to your bin. So some of your bin storage may still be 4 to 6% variable. So Dan, with that being said, even dried corn, we probably need to be visiting them too, and maybe taking some cores out, looking for some fines and stuff to be getting out of the centers. Any other additional advice on corn that should have been properly dried, but maybe not?
Well, just following up on what you're saying, I was on a video conference, I believe it was Kansas State University that put it together, and they did a nice job of explaining that when you're drying corn, even in a commercial dryer or some type of dryer other than natural air, you've got the grain going through columns or being circulated, and at times grain is closer to the heat source than other. Some grain is closer to the heat source than others. So when you come out of that reclaim auger in the bottom of your dryer, you may have a 14 to 15% product coming out, but it's blended. And the stuff that's closest to the heat might be 11 or 12. The stuff on the outside might be 18. You put it into the bin and it's all 14%, but you still have 18% corn in there, and that's what you have to watch, especially in a crop like this. We have seen some of what you're talking about here, where producers crank the heat up on their dryer for capacity. And if they were running 200 degrees, we've heard guys say, well, we took it to 240 or 250. First of all, we didn't recommend that. But what happens when you take your heat that high is exactly what you're saying. You'll cook the kernel to the point that it'll show dry on the surface, but it's not dried all the way through to the germ. And once again, as we get into spring, that germ gets the urge to grow, and then you have a problem in your bin. So if you need to watch that real closely. The other thing that we are fighting here at New Vision, and I think producers will find the same thing too. The breakability of this crop, 2009 corn crop, is just, it's nothing that I've seen before. Literally, you could look at the stuff and it breaks. Every time you handle it, there's more FM. If you haven't taken the centers out of your bins, you need to do that because, quite honestly, it's going to range probably from 10 to 20%. And there's no way that aeration is going to get through that type of compaction with the FM. If you're a cattle feeder or know a good cattle feeder, that's a good place for those bin centers to go, really, because it's a good product, but it's just very high FM.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. Thanks for all the information today and input. And information like this, agronomic information, anything to do with agriculture, we always want to be current with you guys and bring this to you only on US104.net.